In my opinion, employers who hire physically divergent and neurodivergent people are worth their weight in gold, not because of anything other than the accommodations that employers have to bring forward in order to understand who they hired and to be able to be flexible with who they hired. And nothing to be said with the value or against the value of physically and neurodivergent people. They're equal to anybody. Disability does not mean inability, and I realize this. But we do have a couple things to talk about to make this the best possible situation so that more and more employers can step up to the plate and more physically and neurodivergent people can have access to jobs that they absolutely love and are so qualified for. And we have the best person ever for this interview, for this episode, because she's a dear friend and colleague of mine, Lorna Riff. I've known Laura for what, 10 years, probably at least. And
At
Lorna and
least.
I work together in family law. And anybody who's seen these episodes before, you know I have a double life. And my other life is in family law. I'm a mediator and a paralegal. But Lorna has a very interesting story to tell. Lorna, who is a lead manager in the forensic and accounting department at her company and regaled in the county of Los Angeles and all of Southern California, actually, is also responsible for hiring. And Lorna made a hire that I want her to explain to you. She hired a deaf person. And the reason why she could do this is because Lorna's parents were deaf, and Lorna has dealt in sign language her entire life. So, Lorna, just a minute about your life. Your mother. So, you spoke for, quote unquote, your mother for a while, and then your mother's career took off. And I want this to be an example of she's deaf and she was amazing. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background?
I always say my mother was a force to be dealt with, and she worked in the 50s, 60s, and 70s for what was then one of the big eight accounting firms. And she started out as a typist and made way for herself, requesting a position that required somebody to use a phone. And she knew that she couldn't talk on the phone, but she created an opportunity and said, well, you're going to hire an assistant for me, and they're going to be my ears. And they took a chance and they gave her this promotion. And I think she worked in this position for almost 20 years of her career with the firm. And fast forward, um, I was seeing a lack of opportunities, particularly recruiting at the college level. We recruit from one of the local colleges that has the largest deaf student body outside of Gallaudet in Washington, D.C., which is a college for the deaf. And we go to what they call Meet the Firms night. And I wasn't seeing any deaf students come to the event at all. And I inquired and found out that there were six deaf students in the accounting department. But because they didn't have an interpreter to bring them to the event, they would gain nothing from it because they would have unlikely to have a positive experience. It would be very challenging for them to communicate. So I personally reached out and we got them to have an interpreter. They brought the students, brought them to an evening. And of course, the interpreter was wonderful because my other colleagues from our firm could talk to them. And of course, they could talk to other companies as well. But we ended up bringing in one young lady currently who is interning with us. And the team was very excited before she started. And she's been with us now for about a month and a half. And some of our team members, actually, many of them, are learning sign language because they're anxious to, more fully communicate with her. Um, but we've also I check in with her often to make sure that she has the tools with which to do her job and to feel comfortable communicating with everybody. So that's where we are today.
Okay, so the barrier to opportunity was, although these people, very well qualified, graduating from the second largest school that worked with deaf people, university here in California, you weren't seeing any of these candidates for the years that you were recruiting from this school. And you reached out, so you moved that barrier aside, which tells me, Lorna, that the school now is hip to, oh, let's get some interpreters on board so our amazing students can have the opportunity to go to these fairs, these job fairs, and apply.
That is true. And even then, it's still a challenge getting interpreters arranged. The
Right.
question is, the interpreters get paid. And so the
Uh,
question always comes up, who's going to pay the interpreters? And there
oh,
are criteria for any kind of interpreter. There's time limits. And so usually if the evening is, 3 hours or 4 hours, you need multiple interpreters. So that's the other barrier that I've noticed is that there is not a willingness to provide, to pay for the interpreters. So we've always had, I'm learning that I have to make sure that there are going to be interpreters and that has been, that's not going to be a barrier for an event or, an evening. Rather interesting under the ADA guidelines
yeah,
to still deal with that. Yes.
very interesting because, all right, just pushing this out then. So any of the students graduating from a university and they're deaf, they would have to have their own interpreter in order to make appointments with any employer.
Yes.
And then the next step in that would be, okay, so your qualifications are great. This is a wonderful interview. We would like to hire you. Then what? Who interprets for them on the job? And then what? So how did that work at your company?
So what I did, because no one else in this office is fluent in in ASL, but um, we made sure that, for example, we use Outlook Teams and Zoom interchangeably for meetings, but within our office, we use Outlook Teams, and you can turn on the closed captioning. So that, you know, I think today, more than any time in the past, it is so much easier because we have tools available. A deaf person can get all of their instructions through closed captioning. You can communicate with them within the office or anywhere and provide instruction and interchange. You can see them, they can see you. So the addition of facial features and maybe lip reading accompanied by the closed captions, which are very important to deaf people. Um, and so all of that incorporated makes it simpler uh, to have somebody working there, to work here. So I don't really work directly with our employee, and she is working with multiple staff. And I come out and I observe, and she has got, she's got her computer set up, and she's taking instructions with closed captioning and working through schedules and whatnot. And so far, it seems to be working fine.
So Carla, I mean, Lorna, can she speak at all?
So this particular employee can speak. And I think she may have some residual hearing because she does wear hearing aids.
Hmm.
We have another deaf student lined up for an internship later this year, and it will be interesting for the team because she does not speak and she has no hearing. So this term will be an introduction and getting used to communicating, right? And then it's going to go to the next level, which is now you have somebody who doesn't really speak and has no hearing whatsoever. So I think by the time the end of the year comes, the team will be very equipped.
It sounds like it. So, okay, just to get this visual in my head. She can speak and hear a bit. Uh, so when the Zoom meeting takes place and it's her turn to communicate, how does she communicate?
She'll be talking, but she also has the closed captions on. And she
So for
suggests to others to turn their caption on.
okay, for the closed caption, pardon me, that I need a little bit more understanding. Does she type out the words on the keyboard?
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay.
She's typing as she's talking
Perfect.
so
Perfect.
that there's no misunderstanding.
Okay, the first day on the job, she shows up on the job. Are you really the one that spent the day with her, introducing her around and speaking for her? What was that first day like?
Um, I think I initially made introductions, but because we are a huge corporation, the first day for anybody is spent in administrative tasks with our HR department and all our different departments. So I didn't really get to work with her very much the first day. She was in doing videos of you know company policies
You mean
and
watching videos, right?
watching
Okay, she was
videos, and then
watching
she
video.
had interchanges with our HR department for training and yeah, how to
Okay,
do timesheets.
how did
I
she
wasn't
communicate?
even involved.
Well, how did she communicate in the HR department?
On Teams with closed captioning.
Oh, okay. So again, was she sitting in the office with HR or everybody's on Zoom?
No, no, HR is in Kansas.
Oh, I guess it's kind
They're
of
in a
hard if you're
completely
based in
different
LA.
state.
Okay.
They're in a completely different state.
Oh my
Yeah, no, this
God.
is a virtual, a virtual Teams meeting face to face.
Yeah, well, I
Uh,
need to step it up too. I
yes.
work in my own little world here. The enthusiasm of your department, talk about that. Was everybody enthusiastic? Were some people concerned and worried? What was that like?
As far as I could tell, everybody was enthusiastic. I think there was also a bit of nervousness
Mm.
for individuals as to, um, you know, understanding this is going to be a little bit of a challenge and not being familiar, maybe never having met a deaf person before, right?
Some people
And
haven't.
so, yeah. And so I know that some of the team members were nervous about, is she going to understand me and how is this going to work? But I think after the first week, that was all quelled. Um, and you know, it got to the point where our employee was very enthusiastic and wanted people to feel comfortable. So she made sure that she interacted with everybody, met everybody. And I think within 2 weeks, she was also giving people their sign name
Ah,
because that's something you don't give yourself. a deaf person who meets you, you know, if you don't have a sign name, a deaf person that gets to know you will give you a sign name
I
to make it
love that.
easier instead of having to spell your name out every time.
Lorna, you have such a high position with your company, but you still have people you have to answer to. Was it a
Yes,
was it a tough sell for you to bring on a deaf person?
I didn't have to sell anybody.
Okay.
Um,
Purely your decision.
it's my decision.
Ergo, you're responsible for
Was
the outcome. Okay.
yes, and I manage the office that I'm in. So I am given the latitude to make hiring decisions as to who I think, is a good fit for the job. And with interns, you know, these are students between their junior and senior year in college. And they're exploring and we are exploring because we're offering them an opportunity to experience a facet of accounting and to get some real world experience. And it's not a situation where, if it doesn't work out, they've had an experience, we've had an experience, and they can move on
Hmm.
and we can move on. If it works out, we've ended up with another valuable employee and given them an opportunity for a unique career. So that's how I see it.
Well, everybody wins. This is how I look at it. Everybody wins. Hiring neurotypical people, it is not without its challenges, as we know, right? And
Yes.
and so we're all kind of in the same ballpark, so to speak, in learning about the people we've just hired. And as this audience has heard me say a number of times, I decided to be the employer that I would love to see. And I hired a neurodivergent social media person. And it was not without its challenges. I had to be very careful how I asked questions because I was seeing behavior that I didn't understand. But I
Mhm.
genuinely liked this person. I could tell this person was very intelligent. And I just hung in there. I said, come on, we're going to figure this out. We're going to look at the workarounds as you had to look at workarounds. And at the end of the day, it feels good because the employer then has to test themselves on how flexible they are, how perceptive they are in looking at people's skills and talents. And so what if you have to do a workaround? It's the value that person brings to you on a daily basis. But here's what I see, and I'd like you to address this. It's not only a professional value, isn't it a personal value that you feel interacting with a physically or neurodivergent person?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm sure you've had the same experience when you were growing up. People that are recognized today as being neurodivergent were probably the kids in our class that were either sent to the front row or the back row, right? Because they were disruptive, they couldn't concentrate, so on and so forth. Um, it's an interesting thing because in our particular niche of accounting, um, we end up with a lot of people that might be classified as, I call them as having superpowers. And the reason is because our work requires a very high level of concentration for a very long time and also requires a level of persistent, as I say, going down the rabbit hole and the willingness to do that. And not
Mhm.
everybody is cut out for that. Not everybody has the mental patience for the kind of work that we do. And I look out on my team and, when I walk out my door of my office, and I can kind of spot, we have people that wear noise canceling headsets. We have people that have asked to be seated in an area that's maybe not away from everybody, but in a more quiet zone. And so my sense is that, you know, they're here among us, and it just provides an opportunity to learn how to communicate and understand other people. I mean, we're all different, right? We all have our own little idiosyncrasies, and so I just feel like it's a learning experience for me. Also hearing,
Mhm.
understanding how different people work. I mean, it's really fascinating. We have someone in our office, and now I found out there's more than one, um, someone who is colorblind.
Oh,
And it was an interesting learning process for me because we do a lot of reports that might have a lot of colors on them.
right.
And the first time I sat down with them and I'm going through and and I'm calling out colors, and they stepped back, sat back and said, right now, whatever you're describing, I can't tell what color that is. Those three, so it turned out three colors in the red family basically just look brown, and they look the same, right? So they've been here for a while. So we've learned to work around that so that things aren't necessarily color coded. They're more shades as opposed to distinct colors. So once again, everybody, many people have something, right?
Absolutely. And Lorna, when I was having my speaker website designed by a gentleman that I knew, I wasn't understanding why the color balance was so off. And I said, why isn't this color popping? And that he said, oh, I'm colorblind. I said, oh, okay, show me the color chart. I'll pick the colors that they're supposed to be. And that's
Right.
how we dealt with it. That was cool. So here's what I think about this. And I'm so glad you brought up the way we are all enriched
Mhm.
through the flexibility that we exercise in getting to know people better and not judging a book by its cover and making assessments because of a physical trait or behavior. This is interesting. So I had a car broker for the first time get a car for me last year because I was sick and tired of walking into the dealerships. Now, I had already spent half a year doing this podcast, and I learned a lot about um, autistic people and behavior
Mhm.
traits, not only physical behavior traits, but verbal behavior traits and mannerisms. And I loved the guy. I would use him again. He gave me the deal I wanted. But there was something that he was doing that it was annoying the heck out of me. And that was he kept saying to me over and repeatedly, now, Judy, did you get insurance for the car? Did you get? I said, well, I'm like 100 years old. How many cars have I owned? I know that before you leave the dealership or before you get in the car, the new car to drive it, you call the insurance company, you let them know what you're buying, so you get that 3-day waiver. I'm good. And he said it enough times that the last time I saw him, I almost lost my temper. And then I noticed him walking on his toes.
Oh,
That is a sign of autism, and the repetitive behavior is a
yes.
sign of autism. And all of a sudden, I just pulled myself back. I thought, thank God you didn't say anything snarky. And what that has done for me is really allowed me to not rush to judgment on people with our clients, with people I meet anywhere. I now pause and I say, wait a minute. let's just observe some behavior. This could be something that can't be changed, and I just have to be sensitive to it. And for you, and I'm going to throw a compliment to you because I've known you so long, I listen to Lorna talk. We have a study group that meets once a month. So I get to talk to her once a month for 3 to 4 hours. And sometimes we go out to dinner and we talk that way. But what I've noticed about you, Lorna, is that you are so patient. You are so understanding of people. And Lorna works with very high net worth people in her job. And that comes with a lot of stories and also um, a lot of not just compassion, well, compassion definitely, but restraint and patience. That's the word I was searching for, patience. And Lorna works with numbers. And I don't know whether, that means to a lot of us that it's just straightforward business talk. That's not Lorna. I have never met anybody, Lorna, and certainly in this business of um, family law, that is as understanding and tolerant as you are and so non-judgmental. And I am wondering, did this come from the way you were raised? Because you had to be the spokesperson for your parents and watch the world treat your parents maybe in adverse ways at times.
So I grew up at a time when deaf people were considered retarded. And that is the word that was
Mhm.
thrown at me when I was mostly in elementary school. And it was tough. I got in a lot of fights. I was in the principal's office a lot in elementary school because I felt like for whatever reason, I felt like I had to defend my parents because they certainly were not. But I think part of it is just being around, growing up in the deaf culture for the first 20 years of my life. And my father was a teacher at the School for the Deaf and Blind in Honolulu. And the interesting thing is, and I'm not sure what the pairing was about, but the schools for the deaf are more often paired with a school for the blind. And the students are all on the same campus. And most schools for the deaf are also boarding schools. And that's changed with mainstreaming. But that was the case when I was growing up and the school that my dad taught at. So from a very young age, I was exposed to deaf people. I was exposed to blind people. And between those two, oftentimes you have other, um, birth defects, if you will. And so I just was exposed to so much of it. So I never thought anything of it. I never thought of it as a handicap because I played with these kids, when I was little. So I think that more than anything, took stayed with me into, to now. Um, and, my parents, while I was their interpreter many times out in public, and certainly for my mother, who became very politically active after she retired, like before and after she retired. But um, I used this word. My mother was a force to be dealt with. And the things that now that I look back, I've had a chance to just look back and realize the things that they accomplished without my involvement, you know, were extraordinary. Extraordinary. My mother won national awards for volunteerism, one of which was presented to her by the then President Jimmy Carter.
Wow. Wow.
So, um, and that all of these things come to play in my mind in a sense that I, and I think I have shared this with you before. The word handicap or disability is a word that comes from the outside
Mm-hmm.
to a person, right? M- my mother would say, my perceived handicap is my greatest gift. And I remember that um, because it is we on the outside that 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 lay our restrictions, right? Our, I think many times our small-mindedness
Mm-hmm.
about
Yeah.
how people have already gotten around in life,
Yeah.
right? And we prejudge and assume they can't do this or they can't do that. So in my mind, it just says, well, let's see, let's see how this goes. So I'm always willing to give a chance, an opportunity, and my hope for me giving the opportunity to the deaf accounting students at the local college are that other employers in our similar industry will take note and realize they're missing out on a broader opportunity,
Yeah.
right? It's hard enough to find good employees and staff. And so if you can broaden your outreach a
Yeah.
little bit, we're richer for it. We're much richer for it.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I am constantly surprised by of um, the depth of skills and talents and contributions people can make if you don't give them a chance. And I don't care who they are, it doesn't matter. You could look at neurotypical. I mean, people walk in my office sometimes and they're not dressed like I am, they're dressed far more casually. But a couple times they've been plumbers with $3 million in the business bank account. And instead of 401ks, 6 pieces of real estate they've invested in. I'm like, I haven't done that.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, and so I come from a world, well, I worked for the circus back in the 80s, and I gravitated towards the roustabouts
Hmm.
who came from jail or very humble beginnings, um, didn't seem to be well educated. The dental work issue was a big deal because the money wasn't there. But I got to know them. I said, this is a fascinating group of people that nobody talks to. Let me. Oh my God, I am so happy I was motivated to do that. Not only did I find reading partners, I listened to their hopes and dreams and how this one job was a stepping stone to their hopes and dreams. And so I've been like that. And my parents never taught me any differently, to judge people harshly because they may not be like you. So we come full circle to this conversation today. And I was thrilled when you told me that a deaf person was hired for your department. And by the way, for the company, which is a national company, not the first, but still the first for your department. And I can imagine that the interns have something new to play with on a daily basis, which is learning to communicate. What a great skill and talent. And haven't all of us looking at TV with somebody signing, for these press conferences and things, how many of us haven't thought, God, what a cool skill to have to be able to use sign language?
Yeah,
And you
yeah. I
brought that
mean,
to them.
I don't think much. I mean, I learned to sign the way most deaf parents teach hearing children or deaf children if they have deaf children, which is I learned to talk and sign at the same time. So I will often, warn people that my hands are going to be flailing around while I talk because it's very difficult for me to not move my hands while I'm talking.
You have to sign for us the next time we get together next month. I want you
I
to
will.
sign what you're going to say in the meeting. This will be cool. Okay, so to recap, we have the barrier to opportunity,
Mhm.
which everybody who is physically divergent needs to deal with, or somebody. Oh God, this is a whole other topic, and we're running out of time, but wouldn't it be great if somehow on a county level, like neurodivergent people have aids and financial accommodations, that maybe this could take place on like at the regional centers, they're called regional centers in each county, that could be available because maybe sometimes they deaf people don't have the money. Their family doesn't have the money for an interpreter to go with them. Is there any workaround as we just leave the interview and this piece of it? Have you ever thought of a workaround for deaf people to be able to have interpreters as they need them?
So it's been a while since I've been involved closely with the deaf community, but it is my understanding that in certain circumstances, um, there is a requirement that interpreters be provided. So, for example, if they have to appear
In
at
court.
court,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That's one example that I know of. I don't know what the others are. Um, so there are situations where there is a requirement. Um, I don't know. I don't know. I don't personally know what the current challenges are within the community uh, to get interpreters for situations where they need one. You know, for example, a medical appointment. You know,
Right.
a
Okay.
very
Right.
important, a very important situation where you do need clarity about what somebody is, what you're saying and what somebody is saying to you. So I'm, like I said, I'm just not involved in the
In that
community.
area. But
Yeah, I'm not involved in the LA deaf community as I was when I was,
in Hawaii,
growing up in
growing up.
Hawaii.
You
Yes.
know what I just thought of, Lorna? I just thought about this. So, a couple months ago, I interviewed a gentleman who is the lead attorney with the California Disability Rights Organization in Los Angeles. He has cerebral palsy. He has aides with him at all times to do everything. And this man works a full-time job in law in this area. So it's got to be there in these regional centers. So anybody listening to this, Start start with, well, first of all, look at his interview. Ibrahim Sabo, I believe his name is. They call him Bebo. Uh, and listen to that interview on the YouTube site, and then research California disability rights because he said every state has something that mirrors this. And then
Yes.
within that, possibly you could find translators if you are deaf and you're listening to this interview. So we have, okay, so the barrier to opportunity can be moved aside. There are workarounds, and Lorna has found those. And the accommodations can be fun
Yes.
and challenge us in a way that we could rise above ourselves and really have the coolest work environment possible. So, Lorna, thank you for bringing that up a couple months ago in our meeting. I jumped on that so fast because it was just fascinating to me. And it was funny because I said, "Oh, Lorna, let me talk to the person in your company who did that." She said, "You are." And I loved
That
it
that
even
was
more.
funny. I did want to say one other thing, which
Okay.
about my mom. So my mother was invited and did participate in the first meetings of disabled people to help create the Americans with Disabilities.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a wow.
Wow.
It didn't seem a wow when she did it originally, but later when it became reality and it dawned on me that she had gone to Washington, D.C. and um, met other people with different disabilities. And particularly, I remember her commenting on the people that were there that were in wheelchairs and how their barrier was even gaining entrance to most of the buildings in their city.
Yeah.
And I remember her saying how lucky she felt that she was just deaf.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
huge.
So that was pretty profound. Now, I mean, these are things I pop in my head, you know,
Yeah.
every once in a while when certain things happen, um, and this is again why I always say it is we that are, and I'm going to use air quotes on this, us, those of us without impediments, right? We are the ones who put the restrictions on people by not
Yeah.
creating an environment and facilities and all of these things um, that are able to be accessed by
Yes.
everybody. So I will leave with that note.
And what a sage you are, because I was interviewing a woman named Rachel Polaris, and she was my last interview for 2025 and my first interview in January of 2026. She's neurodivergent, but she was giving some history of what you just talked about. And she was explaining that it cost a lot of money to be able to do these cutouts on the street corners so that wheelchairs could move up. And it was a really tough fight to get that legislation passed because it was only looked at, oh, well, the neurodivergent population or the physically divergent population, they're the only ones that need this. What they found out was that was the least amount of people that needed it. People unloading trucks needed it. Blind
Right.
people needed it. People with dogs. I mean, there's so many more uses for people uh, other than people in wheelchairs. Isn't that
Yes.
interesting? And you didn't know it until you were there,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
dealing with it. So, yeah, when we look at, oh gosh, do I have to do this really? What? Stop it. Because when you do get out of your own way and start accommodating other people, you will create a whole new way that will be far more beneficial to you than you could have ever imagined.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, thank you, Lorna. This was really, really great. So maybe you can come back later this year and let us know what's going on. And if more people have been hired, great. Let us know about it because you're the lead. This is a big deal what you've done, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for talking to me about this topic. It's not something I get to talk about very often.
Well, it's completely needed, and there's a huge number of people that do. And just your sensitivity in accepting people is what blows me away. So thank you for your time. I know you're seriously busy. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Judy.
And thank all of you for listening. So very important that we come together as a community to do the best for everybody that we possibly can do. And as always, I leave you with, in the world of special needs, we all need each other. Talk to you next week.